Hi friends, I forgot today was Sunday again. So my bad, I'm sorry. And because I forgot that it was Sunday, I did not prepare anything to read. So I had to come up with an idea very quickly. And the idea that I came up with, I missed the last two, reading, so I'm really sorry and I apologize. Like I said, I forgot today was Sunday, so I didn't have anything. So I am going to read my story, Fate of the Wolves. I will show you the pretty cover that I made. I'm using Max's phone. Where is your gallery? Oh, here. I'll show you the pretty cover that I made. It is available on Wattpad and on Inkit. So here's the cover. Isn't it pretty? It's so cute. And because I forgot, I will be reading that, and yeah, little self-promotion. Okay. I hate reading my own writing. I really hate it. So let's just get over the cringe. I can do it. I believe in me. And tell me what you think. I'm really excited to hear what you guys think. Okay. It began. Will you tell me what you think as well? Because I know you haven't read it yet. Yay. Max is going to tell me what he thinks. Okay. It began with the smell of flowers. The bright colors of dark pink tulips mixed with dark purple violets and sharp tones of almost acidic yellow forsythias brought a wide smile to David May's face. His grin was so massive that it showed some of his missing baby teeth, and the smallest point of his first adult tooth poking out beside his incisor. David was clutching the bright bunches in his hands, careful not to break the stems as he shuffled out of his mother's flower shop. It was already incredibly dark, and the shops had closed for the night. But the cluster of restaurants was full of the few early bird tourists coming to visit Pinewick Bush for one of their famous seasonal fetes. The new faces made the other kids in his class nervous, the girls usually watching the strangers from afar, while the boys tried to tell the new people all the best hiking spots, the best times to go to the beach, and the fun games at the fete. I'm glad I'm not only messing up my reading, my story when I read. The fun games at the fete. David was nervous at first, but his favorite teacher was always excited to meet and talk to the tourists and welcome them to the village that she loved so much. David liked learning, so he learned from teacher Ophelia and wanted to welcome the strangers, and because it was the spring fete, the whole of Pinewick K-12 school was making flower crowns to sell at the fete, and David was excited that his family was providing the most beautiful, most colorful flowers, not only for the school store, but to decorate the town square for the fete. Though it was still a bit cold, David always performed his duty of delivering flowers proudly, and these flowers were very important. Miss Leah needed the flowers for the stone pavilion to decorate it for the fete, as she did for every season. Miss Leah always made sure the village was nicely decorated for the holidays and fetes, and she worked so hard to put up all kinds of different lights, display artworks made by Old Man Spooner and Ducky, and help all the small, picturesque restaurants prepare for the new wave of tourists. Miss Leah helped everyone with everything and made sure Pinewick Bush looked picture perfect. The only thing she insisted on doing on her own was decorating the pavilion. When David first started his delivery route, Miss Leah was his first and best customer, and David was always happy to help. But these flowers more special than than the others he'd already delivered to Miss Leah just before school started. David grinned, holding the bunches close to his chest as he forced himself not to sprint down the street toward the town square. "Late delivery, David?" Mrs. Durham asked, peeking out the door of her busy little restaurant. "They're for Miss Leah," David called, making no time to stop and chat to the restaurant owner. David grinned over his shoulder. "They're for the pavilion for the fete." "You have such young children running around so late at night?" a tourist asked Mrs. Durham. David knew that she wasn't a villager because he didn't know her face. "Oh, you should come in the summer, dear," Mrs. Durham laughed, crossing her arms over her chest. "It's always such a mission to round up all the kids before the next sunrise." The unfamiliar lady smiled, hand sliding over her belly as she turned to the woman beside her. "Honey, doesn't this place sound perfect for us?" David's smile grew wider, sharing a twinkling look with Mrs. Durham as he continued with his delivery. David liked to think that 𝚆𝚊𝚊𝚝 was magical. One look at the beautiful mountains, 2 blue seas, and brightly colored buildings, and he knew tourists would fall in love with the small village. One visit during a fete, and tourists would never leave. Every fete brought new visitors, and every year brought new residents, and soon enough 𝚆𝚊𝚊𝚝 Bush wouldn't be the backwater village, but a thriving town. At least that's what his dad always says. David could see the lights flickering in the distance. The soft glow from the lanterns that Miss Leah put all around the old stone pavilion warmed his heart. David glanced down at the flowers, a special order that he'd made himself because Miss Leah thought the bright flowers would make the old stone gazebo look less scary. David couldn't wait to see how happy Miss Leah would be. "Oh, excuse me." David skidded to a stop and nearly dropped the flowers. The woman was beautiful, tall and lean, with a wide smile and wonderful bright eyes. Her hair was a waterfall of inky black, framing her sharp jaw. Her full lips were bright red, teeth so white it almost looked like the snow that surrounded them. The woman wrapped a long coat tartar around her body, folding her arms over her chest as she walked over to David. The woman smiled. "Sorry, little boy, I'm lost, and I can't find my hotel, and you're the first person I've seen all night." David blinked. "I am? How strange." 𝚆𝚊𝚊𝚝 was like a beehive around the fete. Someone was always doing something and preparing for the week-long festivities. There was always a flood of tourists flocking to the quaint shops, or villagers setting up their private stalls. So it was odd that this woman hadn't seen anyone. David looked over his shoulder and noticed the emptiness of the streets. Though the shop fronts had their doors closed, brilliant, beautiful lights lit up their massive display windows. Flowers framed the displays, and fairy lights were hanging outside of doors. But the streets were bare, not a single soul in sight except for David, this woman, and the tall, old-fashioned iron street lights that were flickering above his head. David turned back to the woman and cleared his throat, purposely making his voice deeper. "What hotel are you staying at?" The beautiful woman smiled, bending down so she was a little shorter. "The 𝚆𝚊𝚊𝚝 boarding house." David smiled, puffing out his chest. "Only students stay there." The woman laughed, bending down onto her haunches in front of David, wrapping her arms around her legs. "Well, I'm a student. I'm here to study the trees." "Why would you want to study the trees?" David asked, brow furrowed over his little face. "They don't do much." The woman laughed again. "You may be right, but that's why I'm here to learn about them." David blinked, looking back over his shoulder at the empty street, rocking back and forth on his heels. His stomach felt funny, and his hands felt stiff as he held the flowers closer to his chest. He turned back to the pretty woman. "Are you going to study the trees during fete?" "No," the woman sighed. I plan on enjoying the fete before I have to study the trees that do nothing. David grinned, flashing a bright missing teeth smile. You should. There's a ton of fun things to do. There are a lot of games you can play and things to buy. And there's a lot of food. Really? The woman's mouth dropped open in feigned enthusiasm. Well, I do love food, but first I need to find my hotel to get a thicker coat. I wasn't expecting the cold to be so bad. David nodded. Oh, sorry. David nodded. Spring is a little late this year, but it should warm up soon. He pointed down the street and grinned at the woman. I can take you to the boarding house. It's right across from the town square. That's where I'm going. The woman straightened, smiling. Are you taking flowers to your girlfriend? David felt his face grow hot and his ears burn the side of his head. His stomach ached a little more, and it felt like he swallowed a hard metal ball. He glanced down at the flowers. I'm really sorry for yawning. He glanced down at the flowers, trying to use their bright colors to hide his blush. She's not my girlfriend. The woman laughed, rocking back on her heels like David was, and she turned in the direction. Okay, I'm just teasing. Come on. She kicked her head in the direction David pointed. Escort a lady to her hotel, would you? You can tell me all about the fete, or your girlfriend. David felt the blush race down his neck and across his chest. He half ran to join the pretty lady and matched her long strides with tiny steps. He held the flowers close to his chest and glanced up at the woman, telling her all about the fete and which stalls had the easiest games to win prizes. I keep yawning. I'm really tired. I'm so sorry, you guys. The woman smiled the whole way, listening intently as if she was trying to carve David's words into memory. David still felt his tummy ache, twisting and buzzing like a bee was trying to escape. The street lights flickered every time he and the woman walked past one. It felt colder as they got closer towards the pavilion, but somehow the lights looked further with every closing step. David clutched the flowers close to his chest, burying his nose into the dark red tulips because there was a funny smell hanging in the air, bitter, and it hurt his throat. It smelled like vinegar. Now my nose is running. Wonderful. The heavy ball in his stomach sank to his feet as he buried his face a little deeper into the flowers, not minding the leaves scratching his soft cheeks or the paper tickling the corner of his mouth. The pavilion was getting closer, the lights like bubbles floating along with the dome ceiling. David could see Miss Leah brushing the snow off the stone banisters and stairs with her bare hands. She must be getting cold. David felt cold. It felt like the snow was trying to take a bite of his bones. It's very late for you to be running around by yourself, David, the pretty woman said, glancing down at the child as she brushed her long inky black hair away from her face. David couldn't smell the flowers anymore. The smell of vinegar was so close now. It felt like it coated his skin and soaked into his hair. The flowers felt stiff against David's chest, and weren't doing much to hide how his heart was thundering inside of him. He felt sick, suddenly, and all he wanted to do was give the flowers to Miss Leah for her precious gazebo. David swallowed the sickness down and spoke around the dryness building up in his mouth. Summer's worse. It's always such a mission to round up all the kids before the next sunrise. The woman nodded, stepping closer to David and putting her arm around his shoulders. So pinewick bush is safe? The stale vinegar smell surrounded David now. It was burning his nose, hurting his chest, and making his stomach do odd flips and flops as the woman pulled him to her side. The street lights above and ahead of them flickered 2 or 3 times before the darkness claimed the light, and only the snow was bright enough to show the path they would take to the hotel, to Miss Leah. David held onto the flowers tighter, not caring about the thorns and sharp branches stabbing through the paper and into his hands. He gave a stiff nod, feeling the woman pull him even closer. No place is safer than Pinewick. The vinegar scent was burning his eyes, and the darkness that lay ahead of them seemed to come closer and closer. The woman crouched down, leveling her eyes to David and tucking him close against her. She smiled down at him, long gentle fingers caressing the bouquet that was trembling in his arms. "I see." The woman cocked her head to the side, and that's when the smell of vinegar mixed with something else, something coppery that made David's tongue feel funny, like he licked too many pennies. And he couldn't smell the flowers anymore, and only caught glimpses of Miss Leah running her hands over the stone columns. He wanted to yell for her, but that copper smell turned into a liquid rushing down his throat. That woman snapped a flower free from one of its branches and carefully brushed David's hair aside to secure a small bright for 𝚁𝚎𝚊𝚑 behind his ear. She smiled a snowy grin. "Happy fate, David." And that's it. What did you think? What do you think's going to happen? You weren't paying attention. What's going to happen? Max is too busy playing Wolfenstein. And that is it. I forgot it was Sunday, so I didn't have the book that I wanted to prepare 2 Sundays ago. So I'll do that next time. But thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you again. Bye.